Welcome, everybody, to the Fringe. My name's
We did it.
Allison. We did it. My name's Allison. This is Anthony. We are the co founders of Fringe, and we're here today to tell you a little story about what it takes to go build a company like Fringe. That's what we're going to do, Ant.
No
We're,
big deal.
we're going to tell a story. The
Wow.
story dates back to today. Right now, it is January 2026. And the story does date back to 2015, 16, 17, when you and I were working together at a company called Rock Tape.
Yeah. Wow. It's been a while.
It's been a long time. So that's where we met, and we sort of divided duties at Rock Tape. I handled a lot of our medical channel and growing our medical business. For those who don't know Rock Tape, that's the sticky kinesiology tape. We did made a ton of really cool products and sold a lot of education and provided education. And then you came in and you sort of, you know, really cleaned up our retail space, our online retailers and distribution, that sort of thing. And then in the end of 2018, Rock Tape sold. And I think that's really where the story of Fringe kind of begins as an idea. So for me, when Rock Tape sold, I think you and I both, we loved our teams. We cared a lot about the people we worked with. We cared about the brand because we had built it. And when we were bought, you and I went and worked for the, large company that bought Rock Tape. So and you moved across the country and you really went all in. So how would you describe those sort of couple years? Because I can tell you that's where in my mind the idea of Fringe began. And I think, at some point I shared that with you. It was probably 2020 in the middle of a full on pandemic where I just said, I, I got this thing that I want to go do and I don't want to do it without you.
Yeah, dude. I just got chills. That
Yeah.
was a strong sentence there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't believe it's been that long. Right. The end of 2018, sold, moved out here, North Carolina. So kind of raised in NorCal, lived there my whole life for the most part. And then my wife has family here. I've always been intrigued about this area. I was in the footwear industry, and Michael Jordan went to UNC, and Jordan Brand is like kind of the most storied line of shoes. And so UNC and the powder blue or the Carolina blue is like always a thing for me. So this area was always intriguing. And the company that bought us was based out of here. And so it really kind of came together for us. Moved out here, to your point, through the acquisition, trying to work through that. I think, I mean, to be completely open, we came into the thing, I would say both of us
Yeah.
really wanting to make it work. We even had conversations of like, hey, how do we feel about this? And what do we want to do or not do? And not to go into too much detail, but we were in an environment that was in its own stage of evolution. And I remember you and I having a probably pretty brief conversation, but being like, you know what? I know we've like for a while talked about starting something, but this is kind of a unique environment we find ourselves in where things are getting redefined and it feels kind of startup-y, but also large at the same time. And I think I don't know if we were rationalizing it to ourselves or
Yeah.
what.
We were.
But yeah, we tried for a couple of years and I
Yeah.
think there was some successes and there were some failures, but no shade to that situation. It wasn't ours. And I
Yeah.
think when you were like, "Hey, I've got this thing I wanna do," I was standing in my garage, which is directly beneath my office, and I remember probably heating up food in the microwave and talking on the phone, and you're like, "I think, we can go do this." And I was like, "Yeah, I think we should." I felt at that time, and I hope I'm not oversharing here, but I felt like at that time, we had done what we could do
Yeah.
in that transition environment. I don't think at that stage, couple years into it, it had felt like we were cutting bait. I felt like, hey, we've done what we needed to. We've done as much as we can. And I think a lot of people agreed with us. And so the timing felt right, even though it was crazy, to your point, middle of a pandemic. In hindsight, I'm glad I didn't think too much about it.
Yeah.
Was just like, yeah, this is to me, and I'm a big faith guy and very much feel like things are written, and it just always felt that way. At the risk of speaking too much on this subject at the top of this podcast, I can tell you when I knew we were going to go do it. I remember my first medical event at Rock Tape. I was at, want to say APTA. You and I hadn't really like crossed much, right? Because I came in to do the retail thing, then I started getting involved in other stuff. And then when I started getting involved in the other stuff, I went to that event to kind of get a feel for it. And I
Yep.
remember you asking me a few questions, one of which was, "Do you always wear sandals?" And I was in the booth in, flip-flops. And I
Yep.
was like, "Yeah, pretty much." And then this is going to sound so weird, dude, but like you kind of gave me this look and it wasn't like, "Don't do that." It was like, "That's interesting. I'm doing some level of calculation here." And I don't know why in that moment, I was like, "I'm pretty sure she and I are gonna go do something in the future." I
Yep.
distinctly remember that feeling.
Yep.
And then, yeah, came to 2020, craziness going down. We had checked a lot of boxes. Timing felt right.
Yep.
Let's freaking do it. And then it was like, "Yeah, I mean, you tell me what you're thinking and let's go."
Yeah, that's funny that you remember that because I think for me, as soon as we were acquired, something happened very quickly during that acquisition, and it wasn't positive. And for anyone who's ever been involved with companies being bought and sold and private equity being involved, there's stories that you hear that overlap so much, in what you hear, and that is like the heart and the soul of a company gets lost, in the transition, and that is something that was so validated for me was that anyone can go make products. Honestly, I still believe that. Anyone can go make products, but the thing you feel about a company is really like the heart of the people that are behind it. You can experience it through touching the product or going on their website or looking them up on Instagram or whatever, and I felt like it was lost, and I was in a full send stage of my life. I was like I don't know how old I was, but this was my third company. I was gonna go in the middle of a pandemic. I was gonna get a divorce. I had 3 kids. I had a big corporate job that I was just gonna say, "Yep, I'm leaving this and I'm gonna go do this." And I will say when people say to me, you know, "What's been the trick to growing Fringe?" And a big part for me that I always say is really probably the only thing I could be credited with is knowing at this stage in my life that I didn't want to do that alone and that I also am not made to run a company. But I'm really good at the ideas and the vision and the leadership in a very fuzzy sort of like rainbowy description of leadership and I know I have those capabilities, but I also knew that I couldn't run a company. And I'll tell you what, I've had way more experiences of companies not being well run, and I
Mhm.
didn't want to sign up for that. So yeah, as soon as I think what I did is I said, I have this idea, you know, in many ways, it's just a continuation of a path that I've been on for a really long time. I'm in alternative healthcare, natural healthcare, whatever you want to call it. I consider it just healthcare. I care about people feeling well. I'm a chiropractor. I have cared about this for, 30, 40 years, I guess, for a really long time. And I wanted to go create a brand that could be all encompassing, that would have no limitations because little did I know that what we would start out doing would be nothing close to what we would end up doing and eventually do. I actually don't even know what our company will be someday, but it just represented I guess you could say, belief or philosophy about healthcare and healing and society and life. And I came to you and I think I had registered the name already. Um,
Mhm.
and I told you, I have this idea. The name of the company is Fringe. I think the CBD market is going to do so well.
Yeah.
amazing. I said, that's a safe market for me to go get into. I told you all these cool things, and I still feel the exact same way, except for the fact that it's the worst market you could go get into. Um, and and I said, I think we could do this, and had all these ideas for names of people and what have you. But, the name Fringe sort of so many years later kind of represents all of us, really. And it's funny because for initially, the name Fringe is sort of how chiropractors, naturopaths, acupuncturists, basically anything that isn't your mainstream medicine, they're always sort of referred to as like the fringe of medicine, right? And that's implied to be a bad thing when people are mostly talking about it. It's kind of like the fringe of science, the fringe of politics, the fringe of everything is sort of referenced as, well, you're not with us,
Mhm.
so you're out there. And it was funny because I don't know, I was on Facebook or something and I was listening to a group of people say, well, they're the fringe of the profession. And I was like, what why is that bad? Why is that bad to be on the outside, to be a bit of an outlier? Everyone I know who has helped so many people is for sure the outliers, and now I realize that fringe is really sort of an attitude, it's encompassed all of us. But for me at the time, it was really related to my profession and medicine and just thinking like, that's where I want to be. I want to be on, fringe by definition would be unconventional or sort of like the outside borders of a group. And that's really where I've always been and where I feel like I belong, and I feel like way more people belong there than they realize, and I do think now from a business standpoint, we are fringe, from a company
Mhm.
personnel standpoint, we are fringe. If that means that you just, question the norm and have a very open mind to ideas that may not be mainstream, then sign me up, and I think that name really truly took on a life of its own, because I think in the beginning what I thought, about it, which was really towards healthcare, is now really, like I said, a bit of an attitude, a bit of an ethos about us, that our company name is Fringe, and we focus on doing things differently, making products differently, running a business differently. We would not be considered mainstream. We certainly would be the people on the outside of the group standing there in flip flops. I don't really actually even remember asking you that at the booth, but I can tell you from my, like, what matters to me and has always mattered to me is that people just can be themselves, and that you have literally always been like that. So have I.
Mhm.
And that, I think, authenticity, is something that sort of vibrates pretty high. And so that feeling that you had would have been probably two, people who are really, you and I work really, really hard and we have very big ideas and goals, but we also just, care about creating an environment where people can just be themselves. So it's funny when people ask us what they should wear to to events and stuff. I'm like, well, don't ask Anthony. God knows what he's gonna show up in. It could be a cowboy hat. It could be, you have no idea what it's gonna be. And you know that I'm gonna be wearing all black, and back off. Like, just let me do this thing. So
Yeah.
that's it. So that takes us really honestly to, you know, um, we made it through 2020, and then in 2021 we started Fringe, really. So the idea was brewing, we were thinking and, dreaming, I guess you could say, but then we sort of took the jump in 2021. And you should tell everybody what the first week of our business was like, because it was incredible foreshadowing for what would come.
Yeah. Uh, it's interesting because the way I've kind of framed it up in my mind is like everyone knows starting a business is hard conceptually,
Yeah.
but until you do it and then encounter the hard, it's almost never the type of hard you think it's gonna be, and that makes it harder. You're like, "Oh, this is gonna be hard," but you potentially think like, getting customers is going to be hard. Well, for
Yes.
us, we launched a business. We started selling things, not at a huge clip, but we sold some stuff. And immediately our credit card processor said, we're not giving you any of your funds for a
Yep.
while. And so it was just like, because we started as a CDD company, and even though the credit card processors knew that, even though everybody knew that we were
Yep.
involved and we were trying to hide anything. But then all of a sudden they were just like, nope, we're not going to deposit your revenues. So like we were selling things, we needed to buy things, we needed to spend money, but we had no access to our funds. And I actually don't even remember how long that was the
Yep.
case for, but it was not a day or two. It was not a week or two. It was a month or two or more, to the point where it was like very disconcerting. I mean,
Yep.
as we've gone through this, we know like the way to get through this thing is just how many haymakers can you take to the face
Yep.
and just keep getting it? Because that's not the type of hard you think it's going to be. Just getting your funds from your credit card processor into your bank account so that you can run the business. That's not what you anticipate. And, we came in with sort of the idea of a playbook and like, oh, we'll run social ads. Nope, can't do that. Oh, we'll do this. Nope, can't do that. So like,
Yeah.
it was just, from the jump, like pretty much immediately, things just went haywire in really, really big, really impactful ways. And that was not the kind of hard that I thought this was going to be. And so, like, I remember like a sense of dread when just being like, we can't sell anything. We
Yeah.
can't tell anyone what we do. We can't tell anyone what we make. And even the people who somehow find out about us, which is basically our friends and family, if they buy something from us, we have no access to that money. And it was just like, that just set the tone for like the last 5 years. It was just like, yeah, okay. And then like, I don't know. I think you and I, our disposition, for better or worse,
Yeah.
is we have way more fight than we do flight.
Yep.
And it was just like, okay, this is how it is now. And it pretty much continued like that for years.
Years. Really, 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shocking amounts of time.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's something for me that when people tell me no, for good or for bad, that's about all I need to make
Yeah.
sure that that will be a yes at some point. But the interesting thing about the industry that we started into, which probably we're not even supposed to name on this podcast, is
Yeah.
I still feel so strongly that that's such an important part of people's options for health and healing, but I also care more about building a business that can help a lot of people. And you can't help a lot of people when you can't talk about it, share stories, tell people about it. So for whatever it's worth, we started in the fringe of the fringe of the fringe of industries. And that did set the stage for a very hard first couple years. And in a way, I think we talked about this, is we had to really become agile. We had to lean heavily into some very grassrootsy,
Mhm.
sort of growth tactics. And our money was so lean that spending wasn't even an option. And for us, we are privately funded by myself and by Anthony. And so we, for better, for worse, again, it made us have to make decisions that there weren't many options. And I think a lot of companies get a lot of funding upfront, and we would have wasted a ton of investors' money in the first 2-3 years. And we didn't have the option to do that. So we just, really white knuckled it. I think the hardest part for me was just sort of, you know, I'm a dreamer, but a doer. And so a lot of the dream part of it just kind of crashing down over and over and over again. Well, that's not how I thought it was going to go. And that's not how, and I thought they were going to be here forever. And now they're gone. I mean, just the revolving door of people that come and go in a startup. And when you're a people like person and a bit of a
Oof.
people pleaser, it's, yeah, you really develop a gut. Um, for startups. So we get asked now, Fringe is doing so well, and we get asked how'd you do it? And I often say Ant should write a book about business and startups and all that. And if I did, it would just be like, you don't quit. And there's all it is every corner you turn, you're like, this would be way easier to quit.
Yeah,
And you just don't, it's not an option. And so then you have to figure it out. But that's not for everyone.
I think it's for very few people, and we talk about that. We should have kept a journal or write a book or whatever, but it's much like just any sort of hard work. It's not what people think it is. There are no tricks, tips. Hey, oh, do this, do that. First of all, every business and every scenario is so unique unto itself. You can't offer up these absolutes as like, this is how you do it. And if you don't do it this way, it won't work. But I think what we have learned the most is that you have to have the grit to not give up. You have to have the agility to be
Yep.
able to adapt to all of these changes. And then you need to do both of those over a really long time period.
Really long time period.
So it's grit, it's agility, and it's endurance. It's not do this, do that. It's like you just have to have it. And that's why I say, like, for better or worse, like, we're just not giver uppers. I don't
No.
sometimes I imagine it probably works against us in some ways, but in
Yeah.
this specific way, that's the secret, I guess, if you wanna, like, come up with something. It's so lame. That's my point of, like, we should write a book, or we should do this, or we should do that, but, like,
Don't give up.
that's lame. Yeah, like, really? Like, you just offer these platitudes, and it's just, it's not that insightful until you've, like, lived it every day and had panic attacks in the middle of the night and, like, just you go to those deep, dark depths that very few people ever even approach, let alone work through, and then you just keep going. Like,
Yep.
that's what you're supposed to tell someone who's in that moment. I don't know who listens to this podcast in the future, but if someone's, like, in that moment and they're like, "Thanks, just keep going,"
Yep.
love that. Like, that's not insightful, but it's not incorrect. Like,
No.
you just keep freaking going, dude, and, like, you adapt over and over and over again, and the types of things you think you're gonna struggle with, you won't, and the things you thought would be easy will be damn near impossible. You'll have to go around, you have to go through, you have to go over, you have to go under. It's if I knew now, if I guess I should say if I knew then what I know now, dude, I don't know if I'm like, "Yeah, sign me up."
Oh,
I just
right. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
always said, like, because people, I've had people say to me like, "Oh, man, that was so smart," or like, "That was so brave," or whatever. Neither of those things is true. What I think about how this has worked for me, at least, I just have, like, very well timed bouts of productive insanity. Meaning, like, when you're like, "Hey, I wanna do this thing," my brain shuts off and I'm like, "Yes, let's do it," and then
Yeah.
I wake up and I'm in it, and the best way out is through. I
Yeah.
didn't think deeply about this and, like, every type of aspect of it, and do I wanna do this? It was like, I wanna do it. There's 2 things that I needed to decide. 1, if I was dying, would I regret not doing this? And it became an unequivocal yes. If I was on my deathbed and I didn't try to do this, I would be legitimately disappointed, and that haunts me.
Yep.
So that checked that box. And the other thing, I think you and I've talked about this before, was am I okay with very public failure? Because that's not easy
Yeah.
to be like, this could go pear shaped and blow up in a very visible way to all of my friends and family and strangers. And I think that does preclude some people making the jump of like, well, I don't want that. And you just kind of have to be like, yes, I'm okay with that. I need to do this. I'm okay if that's the fact or the thing that ends up happening. And then you're just in it and you're just churning.
Yeah, and then the crazy thing about being in it is it's just failure after failure after failure after failure,
Yep.
and, you know, I think people that, can handle that, are well suited in a startup environment, and if you can't handle it, but you like the excitement and the thrill, there's still people that are great to work in a startup environment, but maybe not the ones shouldering, you know, all the nightmares and sleepless nights and feeling like
Yeah.
you're going to throw up and what have you. But I mean, you know, I think we're just so accustomed to sharing highlight reels.
Mhm.
Oh, look at us. This is what we've done this year, and this is what we've done this year. But if you were to make a clip of low light reels, there's 10 times more.
Mhm.
There's maybe 100 times more, honestly. Like, and that probably goes for our lives too. You know, I think people would look at me and be like, wow, she's been so successful. It's just a series of lowlights that I would overcome and work through, and that relationship that you develop with failure, which is kind of even a silly word, which is just like that didn't work as we thought it was going to, or that bombed.
Yep.
What, how do you quickly do you correct course, and kind of what's your inner dialogue with yourself? For me, I correct course really quick. Like that didn't work. Let's go quickly find something that did. And as you know, I'm a massive worst case scenario planner and things. And so it's like, you could never compete with my worst case scenario in my head. So even when something doesn't work, it's like, yeah, but it wasn't the worst case scenario that I drew up. So we're still cruising here,
Yeah.
everybody, you know?
I do think too, like, people's frame of reference for that is important.
Yeah,
Like, this isn't to speak ill of anybody in their life experience in any direction, but if you've seen how bad it can get or how close it can get, life, to, and this is even a privileged thing as I sit here in the United States with all the freedoms that I have as a straight white dude. Forgive me for saying what I'm saying, but like, if you've been to certain places and felt certain ways in your life, some people don't have that point of reference. And
yep,
so when we're in this thing doing what we've been doing with the amazing team now that we have, like, it just has never approached that. It's been very, very hard. And like, I've a different relationship with anxiety than I've ever had before,
me
and
too.
panic attacks and all sorts of stuff. But like, I don't know, the frame of reference for this is like, okay, so like, your business fails, like, what a white collar problem to have, dude. Like, relax. So like, you kind of, I don't know. One of my favorite books of all time is a book called Once a Runner. I think it's a relatively famous book, but in it, in one of the chapters, they're talking about this guy that they're going to run against, and how he's a very tough competitor. And there's just something, they don't name it, they don't know what it is, but you can see it in this person's eyes, that like, that motivation comes from a very different place.
Yep,
And if you don't have that, it's going to be very hard to architect or manufacture it for yourself.
yep.
Like, essentially, that opponent had been to the deep, dark depths and come back, and you can't fake that. And so, like, I'm not saying, I'll speak for myself. I'm not saying I had like a very difficult life by any stretch. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm just saying that, like, there was a point of reference here of like, yeah, s- things can get bad, but you know,
Yep,
there's always worse. And
yes.
I think sometimes if you come into it not knowing that, it can be very easy to be like, this is too hard and all those types of things that I would understand completely now being where we are. People doing that and being like a year in, we talked about it a year in, staring down the barrel of another year like that year. It's like, I 100% understand why people are like, I'm out.
Give me
I
the
get it.
yeah, give me the
Yeah.
paycheck. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, your conviction, you know, for you, a lot of it is most of it is your faith, and I would say that's what it is for me too. I don't care what you call it. For me, it's a very deep, you know, conviction that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Um, and that has always been in this category for me. So I thought I would ask you a few questions, but I'll start with one of them for me. I'm going to ask you a few questions about three things you care most about with regards to this business and building a company and running a business. But for me, this deep, deep, you know, conviction is from a very young age. I knew I wanted to be a helper in medicine. You know, I was very drawn to the natural side of medicine from a very, very, very young age, like young, high
Mm.
school. In high school, I knew that this would be what I would go and do. I had no idea that I would end up, growing businesses and using this kind of platform to be a helper or a healer.
Mm,
But it's a deep conviction inside of me that I want to help people feel better. And I don't have to do that with my hands. I don't have to do that one on one. I just know that what I'm working on every day needs to be contributing to that in some way, shape, or form. And that is what I care about. And so to
mhm,
create Fringe and then have a group of people working for Fringe who can start to feel that too. Like you and I sit now, I don't treat people, I haven't been in practice in a really long time, but just today you shared some testimonies. We share testimonies, reviews that come in every day. We don't know these people. We don't know how they heard about us. We don't know why they're buying our product, and then they email us or they call us or they DM us and they share very personal, very impactful stories about how what we created has helped them. And it's like when your battery's low and those come through, like today we read about some lady's cat who's like 18 or something. I don't even remember how old that cat was, but it's like crazy because I've recently lost a pet and I was like, that I know we helped the cat, but we helped the lady because we helped the cat. And you know what, Elson? Don't whine or moan or complain about whatever it is you're gonna complain about. That's the conviction, So I think if you have, which you have very much so, a very deep conviction about how a company, a business, you know, a brand, what it can be, then it's like nothing stands in the way, So for
mhm.
me, I will say, like, the thing I care about so much is helping people feel better, and I'll start by asking you a question. If you were to say there's 3 things or maybe only 2, however many you want, I know you're number 1 already, but share with everybody what matters to you. What do you care about when it comes to running a business? Anthony is the CEO of Fringe. I started this podcast by saying there's no way Allison should be running a company. It's almost enjoyable to think about. It would be the most chaotically fun at times and not fun at times environment, but you provide immense leadership and consistency to a group of people. And if we're all in a boat trying to row, I mean, half my boat would be going backwards and the other half would be going forward if I was running the company. And with you, it's like row, row, and then every now and again, someone's paddle is like, what the hell is going on with their paddle? And so anyway, what do you care
Yeah.
about? What do you care about?
I actually don't think our convictions are different. I think our tool chests are just
Yeah,
different. You care
totally.
about helping people and you have the background you have, and I care about helping people and I have the background I have. And my background is more it's in economics,
Yep.
in business and people management. And that was my conviction of what I wanted to do here. So when you're like, hey, I want to go do this thing, I was like, dude, so long as that thing is generally positively contributing to the world, I'm in,
Yeah.
because what my tool chest allows me to do and what I have a deep conviction of is that work is killing people. Stress is killing people. And it's a lot of it, at least in Western cultures, is highly tied to the jobs that they have. And being in these companies, and I didn't work for any very bad companies by any stretch, just very normal companies. It's like this can be better. Like we can, it's harder, case in point of what we've talked about a bunch already. Like it's significantly harder to choose to run a business the way we choose to run this business. But I will get emotional about this. I think you know that.
Yeah.
Um, I think if we can change the way we work as a collection of people, that can have a really positive effect on how people feel and how they feel at home and just their lives in general. So what my ultimate kind of goal essentially with Fringe at one point, and I'm not even sure it's that anymore, but it's not, is that if we can actually scale this thing, which we are, to a place where it becomes visible to other businesses and that we can show, hey, you can do it this way. And not only can you do it this way, it can thrive this way. in a very economically viable way, this approach to running and growing a business and managing people can work. And you've always like people have always had that conversation very subjectively, but my background in economics allows me to tie some of that subjectivity to the economics and the currency and the language of commerce. A business in and of itself speaks in dollars and cents. If we can take this approach and show economic viability to it and create some level of continuity or understanding between the dollars and the cents of this approach and the dollars and cents of the other approach, our approach wins.
Yep.
And that was the thing that would break my heart and mind every day is like, there is a better way to do this that's not only better for the people who work here, but it's better for the business itself. And I started taking notes and I've got a ton of things all written down of like, if you look at it this way, if you look at it this way, if you look at it this way. One of the biggest ones, just to give an example,
Yeah.
was that X amount of time, if you have bad culture in a business, your employees are thinking about quitting and doing another job. I believe the estimate's somewhere around 15%. Nobody quote me on that. I read this years ago. But let's say 15% of your employees' time is spent wishing they didn't work for you. There's literal dollars you can assign to that because you pay that person a salary. So 15% of their salary is being wasted by them sitting at their desks hating their lives. You can quantify that. There's also opportunity cost of those people sitting there not doing the job they're being paid to do because they're sitting there hating their job. And when they're not doing the job they're supposed to do, it's not driving incremental revenues for you. So not only have you burned salary on this person, but now you've lost the ability to go make more money because they're sitting there hating their job. And when you put those things to companies and you put those dollars and cents, it's a lot of money
Yep.
very quickly. So
Yep.
like that's where it's like it's not about that for me. It's not the reason you and I do this the way we do this, but it's a reason if that's the only way another entity can think about it. It's a reason for you to entertain the idea, forgive the language, of not being a fucking dickhead.
Yep.
It's costing you money. And if that's the only language you speak, I would like Fringe to be like, look, said this a bunch of times, and here's your now like actual real life example. We did the thing. So, as you know, I could talk about this until the sun goes down and back up and take zero breaths.
Yep.
But that's my conviction. I want to help people too. And
Yep.
that's how I think I can do it. And pat on our back a little bit. I think we're doing pretty good.
Yep. I just realized something very funny that you and I probably have the same 3 list, and we didn't discuss this before this podcast, but our very first
Uh,
thing is we absolutely wanna help people, and we wanna help people via the tools and training and backgrounds that we have. Me being, a kinda nerdy hippie with a with it's like I always say, I'm like a bit of a nerdy hippie with a solid jock in there too. I'm competitive. I want to
mm,
compete. Like I care about growing a business and doing well. But the second thing that I care a lot about, and I think it's your second too, is I care about the customer a
mm,
lot. And the way you care about it and the way I care about it are different. But again, it comes from our backgrounds. I care that the customer feels very empowered by the information we bring to them, with the
mhm,
products we bring to them, with how we approach just talking about healthcare. This matters so much to me that people feel like healthcare is accessible to them, that these tools, that are out there in the industries are available, that they can become educated about them, that they feel sort of empowered to take more ownership and leadership in their healthcare journeys. For me, I'm perplexed and bothered by a lot of the current traditional medical industry, in that people will go into their doctor's office, they'll be told that they need this medication or this surgery, and they'll just do that without asking, well, why shouldn't I? What are my other options? Is there something wrong or it could go wrong, with this option? So I care so much about empowering our customers to learn and to provide them, alternatives. Um, for their health. And then on the same note, from a business standpoint, I think how we view the customer makes us like a very strong case for being economically superior in our approach to this. And it's the opposite of what a lot of companies do. And so it's not the customer is always right. That's not the mentality
No,
of it. It's
no.
so explain it because it's infused into our entire philosophy, right down to like you give us a call or you email us or you DM us or whatever it may be. But your interactions with us, you should leave feeling like we genuinely care. And that's the leadership, Anthony and I, but it's infused all the way down.
Absolutely. It's infused and it's empowered, which is important. Like anyone on our team, well, no one on our team, I should say, will ever get in trouble for trying to do the right thing for a customer.
Right.
I don't care how badly that went, the intention was correct. But again, like you're saying, like we align on this and the tool chest is slightly different. And I want to emphasize though, before like getting into numbery type things, like you can't do it just for the numbers. It short circuits the impact of these types of approaches. So you have to
Yep.
actually just care about the customer, which is the only reason to tie dollars to it again is to make other businesses understand that it's a viable approach. But I don't understand if you're in a business, how you could treat your customer like an annoyance.
Yes.
I just don't get it. Like you sit around talking to people in a business and you're like, do you know who pays our salaries? If people stop buying stuff from us, we all lose our jobs. Like that's how this works. And so to sit there and be like frustrated or annoyed by your customers who are asking for this type of stuff, it's like, what do you actually think we're here to do? If they don't buy stuff from us, we don't exist. So like that disconnect, that distance from the customer just never really made sense to me. But even more so, like just the empowerment to work with a customer and do the right thing by the customer is additionally economically viable. I'll give an example and I'll try to use as few details as possible to not incriminate any of the parties. But the long and the short of it was that we had a customer who wanted to, this wasn't at Fringe, this was at a previous job, that wanted to exchange a thing because the thing broke. It was a international customer. I, as the point of contact for the US, was involved in this conversation. Because this conversation was an international customer, I was involved. The EU head was involved. The head of Asia was involved. And the CEO of the company that I was at was involved, all talking about whether we should or shouldn't do this replacement. Do you know how much those conversations cost? To your point, we had some very well paying jobs, and I wasn't probably getting paid as much as those dudes. So I will say if we spent 30 minutes talking about it, we probably cost the company $1,000 easily. The
For
item that we
for
were talking about potentially replacing cost $6 to manufacture.
yep.
What are we talking about? This customer's pissed because they're not getting an answer and they're not getting their needs met.
Yep.
And we're sitting over here just lighting cash on fire, talking about whether we should or should not send a replacement of an item that costs $6 to manufacture. And I was just like, my soul hurts to be on this conference call, you guys. Like, I can't do this anymore. This makes no earthly sense. We're pissing someone off. We're burning economics. This does not make sense on either side of this equation, but here we are. And just to see those things repeatedly of like, should we or shouldn't we? And then to treat customers like they're a pain in the butt. It's like, I don't understand any of this, you guys. Like, what are we doing here? Like, just be better. Just be
Yep.
nicer. If not for the reason of just being nice, then for this reason. And that's why, like, again, I'll say like it
Right.
starts with conviction and motivation that's like human and real. It can be backed up by numbers, but it doesn't have to be. It could just be a nice person.
Yeah, it can. So
Help your
anyway,
customers.
help your customers. So yeah, I think at this stage, I don't know how people would describe Fringe. Our team is how many people work at Fringe now? This is 2026, everybody.
Yeah. Well, as you know, we've got full timers, we have contractors who are
Yeah.
highly involved, we have part timers. I usually define it by like who's on our biggest email list,
Oh,
like
right. Yeah.
internal email list.
16.
Uh, I think we're at 16, 17 now.
Yep. So we have
Mhm.
16, 17 people who work for Fringe. And that is, for me, my final, if I had to pick three things I care about helping people feel better. I care about empowering our customer or the consumer to feel like they can take leadership and ownership in their healthcare journeys. And the third thing I care a lot about is taking care of the people who work for us. And I think from my standpoint, that's different than yours again, because our backgrounds are so different. I think you care a lot about their development and helping them grow. And I care about their, not that you don't care about these things, but, I think about their time with their families and what their lives look like working for Fringe. And do we provide them an opportunity to really step into, maybe a life they thought they couldn't live,
Mhm.
um, because we're there to kind of show them, you know, what is possible, um, when you join a team like this, and I guess work for people like us that care about that. So yeah, I care about their vacations and what their kids are
Yeah.
doing and what do they do when someone calls in, sick and can't go to work. I'm a mom of three teenagers. Those are the things I care about. But when you and I get on calls, you always reference the professional, which is personal, and maybe we'll end this call that way, their growth, like as
Yeah.
people, how can this job better them? Um, and and so yeah, that's my final thing that I care about, and I know you care about it a lot too.
Yeah. I mean, that's everything, right? Like,
Yeah.
if we can sum up the first two with the third, it's that the customer experience is never going to exceed the employee experience. We can't have our
No.
customers and community we can't authentically, I should say, have our customers feel a way about Fringe that our employees don't. It
Right.
just does not work. Yeah, I think it's hugely important. I actually feel a certain sense of guilt around this. You and I have talked about this quite a bit. We launched with all of these notions, and we did just start this call talking about how hard it was.
Yeah.
People didn't start at Fringe and have it be any type of fun. This
No.
was very hard
Very
for a
hard.
really long time, and
Uh-huh.
there are multiple people who've been around through all of that, and it was like, "Man, this is not what I wanted for you guys."
Yeah.
And but if we need to tie it to economics again, people who worked at Fringe came to Fringe because they know this about us, about how we feel about our people and
Yeah.
how we work with our people. Pretty much everybody, minus maybe one at this point, who works at Fringe, we've worked with already at some point over the last 15 years. The most sound economic proof I can give you for this concept is that people quit their jobs and worked for Fringe for free for years. I don't want to necessarily couch this in economics, but there's no better economics than free labor. You don't get that. And so just the approach of being like, we care about this, very real care about this. Meaning at some point, this becomes what we want it to be, which is why this year is so exciting to me because we're starting to be able to do that. But
Yeah.
like, dude, if you need proof of concept here of why you should care about your employees, we had people work for us for free for a very long time and who are still not paid to the level that they should be paid. What else do you want? Free labor. Just because of that conviction, like this matters and to
And
their
that
personal development.
Yeah, and that they had their own sense of faith that this would be worth it, so
Yeah.
their investment was was different in some sense, but not really because it was still blood, sweat, and tears on their end, that they invested and have that sense of ownership, in what we've grown. So, yeah, the crazy thing about this is you can own a business and you can share that business with your employees and make them not just feel like they have ownership, actually deliver what owning a business um, can benefit people with. And yeah, you can do all of that and you can have everything that, you want and desire um, as well. So it's just a lot more sharing is caring mentality in the world. But yeah, in the
Yeah.
world of business, I think you build bigger, more meaningful, more sturdy businesses that can last a lot longer when you have some of these foundations in place.
Yeah. I think we've been through the crucible. We've been baptized in fire, whatever you wanna
Yep.
call it. We're starting to emerge from the other side of it. It's every day is challenging in its own way, but yeah, I mean, I'm so excited for those people who came on board and stuck with it to
Yeah.
be like, yeah, and I mean, we're gonna meet up as a team in a couple of months, and it'll be very impactful. I think that time to come together as a team and just be like, "Holy crap, that was wild.
Yeah.
We all made it. No one died. That's incredible. Congratulations." And now, like, we get to have kind of a genesis, a rebirth of like, okay, now remember all that stuff we talked about 5 years when then we launched the company and we couldn't get our credit cards processed and couldn't run ads and couldn't pay anyone and all blah, blah, blah. Whew, okay. We did that. Now let's maybe kind of start to get back to some of those concepts. And that's so exciting to me that we're kind of in that position now, but you don't start there. And I don't think anyone necessarily thinks you start there, but if anyone does, you don't. You start way back, way deep, way down, and then you just kind of keep on moving. And then you do that with a really good team of people who care just as much. I mean, we carry titles of co-founders, but we have a lot of people who worked deeply on the foundations of this company,
Yep.
and probably will in the future as this thing grows. So yeah, again, why it's so exciting to be heading into this year. I mean, now we're doing a podcast and Evan's behind the scenes recording things and like everything's going on. Like there's just so much happening. And I'm just so stoked for that to mean stuff for our team. I'm stoked for us for that to mean stuff for our customers and then, keep this thing going and maybe people start noticing and maybe we have some influences on some other businesses and that would be cool. But if not, we're over here doing our thing with our crew. And if it's providing for us on all levels, not just financially, then I would call that a success.
Yep. I would too. And I think you guys can expect Anthony and I'll come on this podcast now and again, talk about different topics, but at the end of the day, we're the faces that I guess I looked at his flip flops standing at a professional medical event there everybody was in dress shoes, khakis, and polos, and I said, "Yeah, this guy and I are gonna go start a company someday, and
Yeah, dude.
it's gonna be a really great ride, and we just stay ourselves, and wear what we wanna wear, and say what we wanna say, and do what we wanna do, then everything will be fine." That should invite everyone who becomes an employee here to have that feeling of safety, and then also our customers should somehow feel that. They should really resonate with that. So to get kinda end it with a, kind of good vibey, fluffy energy, that's really what it's about.
Mhm.
I think we always say high vibes, we're trying to keep that up. Doesn't mean we don't have days where things go wrong. We've already alluded to that. There's a lot that still goes wrong, but um, yeah, I'm gonna go make a bunch of new products this year for Fringe,
Yeah.
and I make them because our customers email us and say, "You guys should do this," or "Do you guys have this?" And that's the most fun thing now is that we're able to communicate with people and hear what it is they love that we're making, what it is they wish that we would make or talk about, and I'm making things I never imagined in a million years I would be making.
Yeah.
So,
It's
pretty
exciting.
fun. It is really
Yeah.
exciting. So, thanks everyone for listening to us, Anthony and Alyson. You'll see emails come from Aunt and Allie. This is us.
Yeah.
Sit,
Thanks.
sitting in our offices that we sit in every day, looking behind us. This is what we do. I have been looking at Aunt sitting in that chair now for literally 5 years.
Yeah, I think I might need a new chair.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
pretty worn in.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Bye,
All right.
everyone.
Bye, guys.